I just want to very quickly go through brand authentication tools. So what we've got there on the right is just a very obvious example of what that would mean in the healthcare industry, what a user would see coming from a call coming from a healthcare provider that signs up to any of these frameworks. Essentially what you've got there is an immediate visual representation that the call is legitimate. First of all, you've got the logo that enables the user to immediately identify that the call is coming from the healthcare provider that they're expecting. It's also got the name of the healthcare provider is as well. At the moment, what we've got is different areas in which different elements of the phone call can be placed. So, first of all, the phone number will appear. Standards are working towards including in all phone calls the nature of the call or the name of the person that is answering. And the idea being that before the call is answered, the user has the ability to immediately identify who the call is coming from, what the call is for, and it places trust that once they answer that, they're not putting themselves in a vulnerable position in which users can, or fraudsters, should I say, can take complex information or sensitive information away from users for monetary or nefarious gains. The stir, shake, and framework is, a key example of how to enable this brand authentication solution. We're seeing it in the US already. We're seeing other areas also working towards similar frameworks. We're not expecting many regions to copy stir shaking exactly, but the basis is there from stir shaking that shows the rest of the world how these issues can be mitigated. And now I'm going to hand over to Jim from TNS now, who's going to talk you through his area.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Adam, and that was a good intro to what authentication looks like and what can be delivered from an authentication perspective to the end user to help try to restore the trust and voice. Stir shaking is certainly one methodology. However, what I did want to point out is that there are some challenges that we've seen in the U.S. where bad actors are good at working on the edges of stir shaking. We've seen stir shaking continue to increase. However, there is room for improvement for the consumer. I mean, good news is that all small providers, including those that have less than 100,000 subscribers, needed to comply with the FCC mandate to implement stir shaking in the IP portions of their network, and that just happened about 12 days ago. So at the end of June. But what we do see is some of the errors with implementation. We're seeing TN validation failed. We're seeing over attestation. What do I mean by over attestation? It's signing traffic with A-level attestation that I know who the customer is and that they have the right to use those numbers when it's clearly not the case. And unfortunately, sometimes that can undermine and devalue what the stir shaking mission is. We have looked at additional call authentication methods beyond stir shaking that are out of band, that are integrated beyond stir shaking. And again, the reason that we've had to do that is we have seen illegal calls where A-level attestation have happened based on the tracebacks that we've done with US Telecom and some of our larger carriers within the industry. So the other limitation within stir shaking is that bad actors can get valid telephone numbers to perpetuate scams and then just kind of move on. And we've seen that happen a lot with low volume snowshoe spamming. So they'll place a very few number of calls across across a small number or across a large number of telephone numbers. So if we move to the next slide, stir shaking clearly is one solution. We've also then, developed out of band solutions that I mentioned, and that's going to really be required to deliver the rich content, call intent, call logo, verifying that it's from that particular enterprise. So we've created an out of band, call event API that tells us, hey, we're about ready to make this call from an enterprise perspective. And then, we will know then that call is truly from that legitimate healthcare provider. If we see, a call from that telephone number come into our network before it arrives at the subscriber handset, we can, do call labeling or call blocking for that matter, with that particular call. And so, that is, that's really going to, again, you're not going to display the logo and the content if and in fact, you're going to warn the subscriber that it really, that particular number was being spoofed for that particular event. So again, there's two solutions here that we've talked that we can talk about. It's whether we see the right attestation level through stir shaken, or through our verification with the out of band solution. So to summarize, if we kind of move to the next slide, why do we need both solutions from a stir shaken perspective? With our branding calling customers that we've seen so far today, about 44% have TN validation passed, which tells us that that call has been authenticated. But unfortunately, still, well over a third of the calls have no stir shaken information. And again, that could be because the call either started out as TDM and or hit some TDM link within the network. So again, we think that you're going to need both solutions in the market. We've developed the call of any API using REST, which is much easier, and simpler interface for our customers to work with, as well as a SIP option. I'll turn it over to Shelley on why it's so important and what is the goal of call authentication, whether it be through stir shaken or through our call of an API.
Thanks, Jim. So the overall 4 goals of enterprise authentication is first and foremost to increase call answer rates. We see this specifically in healthcare. A missed appointment, a missed telehealth appointment really has a negative impact on the business, on the ROI of the business. So increasing call answer rates is a top priority. Preventing spoofing, again, when people do answer the phone, we want to make sure that they're trusting that call. So with authentication, they can in fact trust that telehealth appointment is from their physician. They can answer it, and that it has been authenticated. We also give the ability for content loading, logos, enterprise registrations. And then finally, our analytics part of this whole equation is the actual scoring of calls. So we are actively scoring calls, and when calls reach a negative score, we are contacting those carriers and making sure that those calls can't be completed, figuring out what's going on with them, and making sure they don't have network access. Moving along, we've done a couple of healthcare surveys, and we have some use cases from 2 of our current customers. One of our current healthcare customer is reporting a 41% increase in answer rate. And another one of our customers, as you can see, it's Assurance IQ, has seen a 25% increase in the likelihood that a customer who receives a call continue to explore their financial solutions. So they're trusting, they're maybe out looking on the web for some additional information from Assurance. They're getting a call from Assurance. They're almost waiting for that call. They trust that call's from Assurance, and they're ready to have what could be a confidential conversation with them.